which I'm anxious to see. But what did you learn from the 4-year process of doing this movie, and maybe how it relates to what we're doing today?
I learned how easy it is to move a population out of fear. The Bush administration called upon Congress to make a decision to vote on the Iraq war, which really wasn't a war, it's an occupation, the Iraq invasion. And the bill was debated in October 2002. And you can see the Congress, House and Senate members, many of whom stood to read the White House talking points. Saddam has more weapons of mass destruction than Hitler ever had. The longer we wait, the more dangerous he becomes. John McCain says that. Ted Stevens of Alaska stands up. Now think about, in terms of the parallel with the witnesses, the hysteria. A grown man, Ted Stevens, stands up in the Senate and says, history will read that the nations that stopped Saddam Hussein saved the world. This is the level of hysteria to which a president can take a grown man. And what happened was, through this strategy, Bush took this nation by the ear and led it right into the sword. The nation and the Supremes, in the first decision, the Gobitis decision, took this nation to the extreme, took it by the ear, and capitalizing on the anger of the people. If there were ever proof that even the members of the Supreme Court are influenced by the political winds of the time, doesn't mean they all are, doesn't mean they haven't had their own courageous decision leaning against the wind, but you cannot argue that somehow these 9 old men, and that's what they were at that time, have totally insulated themselves from the mood of the country. And nothing proves in a more powerful way how influenced they can be than the Jehovah's Witness cases. Interesting.
You're interesting. I love your passion.
Thank you.
Well, let's cut here, but I want to grab a little bit of Bill Donahue. Anything that you'd like to add as we go into this kind of interesting opportunity? The question I should be asking you.
Oh, you're doing pretty well. Well, our kids should know these things. There are millions of Americans who believe, for example, that when a president is ramping up for a war, you have a patriotic responsibility to support him. And that attitude is killing our young adult children. We become a warrior nation. We bomb everything. We're now bombing people in a manner that's being controlled by a guy sitting in a control room in Nevada, watching the TV images from a drone, unmanned aerial vehicle. And we're killing women and children. You can see it. They take video. He's watching. There they are. Whoosh, boom. We're killing women and children. And by the way, where's the valor in this? Well, nobody's in the drone, and the guy's a half a world away. The people have more power than they realize. But it has, we've got to get away from this notion that, Marlowe's parents used to say, if they didn't know what they were doing, they wouldn't be in Washington. This is the devotion we had. Eisenhower, Lend-Lease, the Marshall Plan. I thought that we were the greatest. What a lucky kid I thought I was. Born by accident of birth into the freest, greatest, most powerful, best country in the world. And so, obviously, when we called a war, we were right. And it wasn't until the 70s I mean, I'm a slow learner. Actually, 60s, late 60s. I began to think. A guy came on, a professor from Ohio State. He said, "There isn't a professor at Ohio State that supports this war." I said, "What?" And I, remember, this is the Catholic kid, America, good and true, Frank Capra movies. I used to go to movies on Saturday afternoon, and we called them Japs, one syllable, Japs. And they looked funny. They usually had a tooth missing or something, remember? And they'd be flying there, and the zero on the wings, And all of a sudden the canopy would fill up with holes, Frank, in these movies. And the plane would go like this, smoking, and we stood and cheered. I was 8 years old. You have to kill Japs. This, I brought these into my adult life. I don't know how long it was after. I'm on a 747, Japan Airlines, flying to Tokyo. And I looked out the window, and on top of the wing was a zero, a red circle. I thought, oh my God. I'm being served now by this country that we dropped 2, not 1, 2 atomic bombs. I'm just afraid that we're going to we need a remedial course on the Constitution and what this means. The framers were right. Separate church and state. We do not want a president that talks to God every day and God talks back. They were so smart. Don't let, if there are people, if they've got God and you don't, that's part of this political dialogue today. I mean, that's the coup de grace. You don't love America. You don't respect the troops. You don't want to fight for America. And then the coup de grace, you don't believe in God. It's phony. It's shallow. I think God is up there saying, "Oi, talk to the person next to you on the bus. Stop talking to me." A little arrogant of me to presume to speak for God, but I mean, that's what's rolling around my head. And then I think the business of growing up, and as I say, it took me a while, longer than it should have. It was around the late 60s that I first interviewed Noam Chomsky. And I said, Professor Chomsky, just what is it you're trying to say, in my own clever, elegant way? And he looked at me and he said, never trust the state. What? I mean, I was raised to, the V sign out my uncle's car window on D-Day. My uncle took a bullet in the Battle of the Bulge. Showed me the scars. We won. We defeated Hitler. We were good and right in all things. And that's what got us, we suffer from too much devotion. These are, we have to, we're the people. It should be from the bottom up. That's the whole point. The framers were right. I think, we're the patriots. The people wrapping themselves in the flag, And by the way, if you're a politician, you want to get on a stage not with one flag. You got to have them all the way across the stage. There's a certain, I don't want to say vulgarity, but, easy, big fella. It makes us look insecure. And so I think that a lot of the grief that has come to our nation has been provoked by public servants who have wrapped themselves in the American flag. You've got to be open to dissent. Otherwise, if there's no dissent, there's no democracy. You can't claim democracy if there's no dissent. And at a time when we need free speech the most, when a president is, we're going to war, because I say so, I have to protect you, and by the way, I have to listen in on your phone calls, and in order to protect you, I'll put people in cages halfway around the world and we'll waterboard them and pull their fingernails out. For Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, cruel and unusual, quaint ideas. It's a wonderful notion, but it's not very practical. This is how easy it is to lose the bedrock, fundamental principle of this Republican democracy. And if Americans aren't aware of that, we will. If nothing lasts forever, then nothing ever will, including this wonderful idea of Jeffersonian democracy. And that's why we have to be alert. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. And if you don't use it, if you don't use your right to free speech, dissent, kicking tires, standing up against City Hall, then you're wasting the blood of the thousands and thousands of young Americans who died on foreign battlefields to protect this right. And all of a sudden you look up and we have the highest officials in this nation turning their back on the Bill of Rights. Honestly, I think if you put the Bill of Rights to a vote, I'm not sure the last administration would pass it. And that's fear. I can convince you that if I don't have this power, Miranda, don't make me laugh. We're arguing now about where we should try these people. There's a significant number of people that would just as soon have them tried, in the middle of a jungle and disappeared without any thought of the pain, the agony, the sacrifice, and the blood that went into the shaping of our Constitution. The greatest document, I think, to oversee the affairs of a civilization ever written. And when suddenly you look up and we have an administration that essentially is saying all men are created equal unless we're scared. That's not the framers' vision. It's not my vision. It's not the vision of millions of Americans. But we have enough loud Americans who can promote fear and move us to turn our back on what it is that makes this country different and better, I think, and more noble.